Hello again. In this video I'm going to do something we haven't done for 11 years, and let's talk about binoculars and prisms, updating, if you will, what I did a decade and more ago. We'll keep it accessible, hoping to keep you on board even if you don't own a prismatic binocular yet, or even if you don't know what it means. Trust me, billions don't. We'll deal with some misunderstandings, show you how a modern binocular works, and while we're about it, we'll add a ringing modern note to the Porro prism, roof prism debate. We'll get right into it after the Hour of Despair. This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Our videos from all those years ago claim to be a vintage optics masterclass, 2 episodes of which dealt with binoculars. Now, those masterclass videos still generate a postbag, especially now Google's AI search tool is sending traffic to them as though they're something authoritative, even though they're not. I know, I did them. But we get questions about prisms and the nature of prismatic binoculars in a form that makes me think there's quite a bit of confusion around this topic. And things have moved on in the intervening decade. I thought I'd try to bring things up to date a bit. First, let's get a general view of the landscape with a potted history of binoculars. The binocular as an aid to extend human vision is as old as the telescope. When Hans, Jan or Johann Lippershey or Lippershey, the German-Dutch spectacle maker, first applied for a patent for his perspective glass, as it became known in 1608, the agents of the Royal Dutch Court weren't impressed with the fact that the instrument could only be used by just one eye. The uncivil servants sent him away with a flea in his ear to redo the instrument and his patent to use both eyes. And the binocular was born. We'll just linger on the terminology for a moment because it catches people out. Any optical device that allows you to use both eyes is a binocular. The name from the Latin root, bini or bini, means two or twofold. Ocular, or the Latin oculus, gives us our Englishified binocular, meaning using both eyes. As you can see, all of these are binoculars, regardless of the specifics of the design. They all end in 2 oculars or eyepieces, so they are all binoculars. The same would go for a binocular microscope and a binocular telescope. The technical details of the design don't matter, only the fact that you use both eyes. While we're on the subject, this singular is a binocular. This is a pair of binoculars. Everybody get that? Because I'm going to be asking questions later. This is about as compact as a double telescope binocular gets. One of the causes of the length of this type of instrument was the need to employ the Schyrl-Huygens erecting eyepiece system. I want to show you this in a bit more detail because for about 200 years, up to about 1940, it was the dominant method of correcting the image in a terrestrial telescope. In fact, for the first 100 years of that time, it was the only method of rectifying the image. And of course, that includes binocular telescopes as well. I'll tug the eyepiece out. It comes out with a nice pop. It's a 2-element Huygens type eyepiece, plano-convex at the front and another plano-convex for the eye lens. There's a field stop in there to improve contrast. Now, I can't show you the rest of the Schyrl-Huygens system very easily on this instrument, but you can see some more optics gleaming a little way down in the barrel there. The other Schyrl relay lenses are about here, near the joint. It'll be easier if I bring in a small telescope and show you the near identical optical arrangement of its eyepiece system. You can see that the tubes of this binocular telescope are only a bit smaller than this little Hawke 3-draw spotting scope by Broders-Clarkson. The Hawke has a longer focal length, but both instruments are Keplerian terrestrial telescopes. What gives them this identity is the Schyrl-Huygens eyepiece system, which they both have. Getting at it on the binocular is a bit tricky, so we'll investigate the design on the Hawke as it's easier to get inside. I can just tug the eyepiece out of the first tube. It's piston fit. There's usually a screw-on eye cup, but that's missing off this specimen. The eyepiece here is the Huygens part of the deal. It has two lenses that just unscrew, with typically a distal plano-convex lens and another plano-convex eye lens. There's a field stop in there to block extraneous light and improve contrast. But that's only half the optics of the Schyrl-Huygens system. At the other end of the first tube, we have another optical barrel. This is the Schyrl relay system, and its role in the Keplerian terrestrial telescope is to fully erect the image and put everything the right way round, up and down and left and right. I'll just pop the eyepiece back in to make a point here. This is the complete Schyrl-Huygens eyepiece system separated from the telescope. And we can remove the Schyrl erector barrel. Two lenses again. It's worth noting that without the erector barrel, assembled like this, it becomes a Keplerian astronomical telescope with an inverted eyepiece view. It will work well like this. My first astronomical observations when I was 14 were made with a larger version of this telescope from the same manufacturer, with the Schyrl erector removed like this. I observed the phase shape of Venus and Mercury one summer with my father's telescope, and I will never forget it. The main point I wanted to show you was the amount of space consumed by the combined focal length of these lenses of the Schyrl-Huygens system. The one thing it isn't, and could never be, in use is compact. The Schyrl-Huygens eyepiece system was in use well into the 1960s, and is still in use today, though rarely. But it telescopes down nicely enough for carrying around. So Lippershey's early 17th century idea of lashing two telescopes together is where things stood on binoculars until the mid-19th century, when field glasses first started turning up in large volumes. There really are a lot of these things still around in the world. The French in particular made literally millions of these things. The chances are, if you find one in an attic or a junk shop or an antique shop, and it has a Dutch, German or English name on it, the chances are pretty good that it was made in Paris or at least somewhere else nearby in France. The majority were very good, well made even. I want to show you an example of a Galilean binocular. This is an opera glass, it's modern, still produced in China and sold under various brands around the world. It's made pretty much the same today as they have been for the last 70,000 days. The objective lens cell just unscrews. The lens is a cemented achromatic doublet. This surprises some as they expect it to be a single lens. All binoculars made before 1730 had only single element objectives. The eye cup just unscrews, and underneath we have a single Galilean eye lens. It's held in place with 3 120-degree collimating grub screws. Just make sure it's loose. And there it is, the Galilean eye lens, which produces a corrected image without any additional lenses or parts. This is a single piece of glass. It's biconcave, which means it's concave on both sides of the lens. This opera glass is typical of most and has a magnification of less than 2 times, with a field of view that's more like looking through a drinking straw than a modern binocular. It's a rare example of a piece of technology that performs as well or as poorly today as it did 200 years ago. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves while I put this back together. And there we are. Looks like a gem, feels like a gem, and performs only slightly better than a potato with a hole in it. Modern folk are often startled by how bad these things actually are. Remember, for a big chunk of the 19th century, for ordinary folk, they really were the only economically available product. Even then, the best ones were still out of most people's reach. Years ago, in my shops, when we were still demonstrating the latest binoculars, we would let customers try out the collection of old field glasses. Where's the zoom being one of the most common reactions of people looking through these things. In 1850, while the French were busy flooding the world with their low-powered opera and field glasses, the Italian Ignazio Porro had the idea of keeping all the power and versatility of the double telescope, but shrinking the instrument down to something more like the size of the unfathomably popular field glass. His idea was brilliant. Using very high quality, and I'll say more about that in a moment, right-angle prisms, he was able to correct the image inversion without the necessary long barrel of the Schyrl-Huygens optical erector system used by telescopes of the era, and eliminate the poor field of view offered by the single Galilean lens eyepiece used in all field glasses to correct the image. The right-angle prisms he used in the system that today still carry his name corrected the inversion error without any shortcomings, and the effect of passing the light through the reflections of the double prism system greatly reduced the length of the body required to hold the lenses. So better eyepieces offering higher magnifications, 10 or even 20 times could be achieved, and with a much wider field of view, and all in a package that was vastly more compact than anything previously available. We need to look at the deep power of Porro's prism arrangement in more detail. First, we need some prisms to play with. Zeiss, baby. Yes, that'll do nicely. These are optical grade right-angle prisms. We'll use the larger ones as they're going to be easier for my pork sausage fingers to handle. All three sides need to be optically flat. Even though we're reflecting the image from only two internal surfaces, the hypotenuse or long side also has to be optically flat, as it functions as the input and output window, and if it's not flat, it means it's acting like a lens, and that won't do. It's worth pointing out here that these should not be called Porro prisms. They're just right-angle prisms. Strictly speaking, even the one on the left here, which obviously belongs in a binocular, only becomes a Porro prism when it's assembled into the Porro arrangement. Got our right-angle prisms here. Let's put one in the ready position, and I'm going to switch on my little laser gadget just here. This produces nice little straight lines, you can see that. I'm going to point that into first one, line that up, get a good in and an out beam, fairly equally spaced, and now I can put my second prism in, and we can see the second beam there coming along the top. I'm going to just got a little bit of water here, and I'm just going to paint that onto the prisms on the sides because they're frosted. I'm hoping that's going to help show the beams actually going through the blocks. I'm not sure if that's working well enough. Might need to dim the lights, I think. Yeah, I think you can see what's going on here quite nicely. We can see the beam come in here into the input face, 45 degrees off the face here, up to the second face, and 45 degrees off that one, out into the input face on the second prism. Once again, 45 degrees off this face, over to the other side of the prism, another 45 degree reflection, and then out. This is a very versatile geometry because I can very easily change the position of the prism, bring it back here, get exactly the same beam out. Remember, these prisms are working on a total internal reflection basis, so everything we put in, we get out in principle, except a tiny little bit of dispersion. I can close up the prisms like that and still get the same output from it. Don't forget we can rotate this prism as well, of course. I can turn that through 90 degrees. That won't really work all that well on this demonstration. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see it, I don't think, very well. Well, I guess you can. There's the beam coming above the prism there. It's in this orientation, with the prisms rotated 90 degrees to each other, that the Porro arrangement delivers the image correction we need for binoculars. Laying flat like this doesn't correct the image. There are other considerations like the size of the prisms, the size of the light cone coming from the lens, but this ends up being an incredibly versatile way of constructing the image correction system and optical folding system in the binocular. I can vary the size of the prisms. I can do a lot of different things here. Varying their positions and their sizes gives me a lot of control of the ocular and the objective that I'm going to use on my instrument. Hopefully you think that's a nice demonstration and it's shown you something about how the Porro prism system actually works. Before we move on, I want you to see a couple of the practical uses of some of those design opportunities inherent in the Porro system I was showing you just a moment ago. This little monocular, I've obliterated the brand name of the company that makes this to, or at least imports it into Europe, to spare their embarrassment basically. But this is a copy of a Zeiss Thermon. It's a very distinctive little thing. You may have seen the Zeiss version of it anyway, but it illustrates quite nicely a number of the things I was just talking about in terms of the competence of the Porro system to, well, generate interesting little optical systems like this. If I take the covers off here, and you can see that they've really used the idea of the varying prism sizes. So you can see we've got a small prism here, small Porro prism, and a bigger one here. And the reason it's bigger is because this one is closer to the objective, and a larger light cone is coming in. And of course, as it transits through the Porro system, the cone is getting narrower and narrower. So we don't need a big prism over here when it finally delivers the tip of the light cone into the ocular position. So that's a nice illustration of that. And you can see they've made maximum use of the idea of rotating one of the Porro prisms. It really works very, very well. This is largely for convenient storage and carrying around with you in your pocket. When you actually use it, it gets folded into the action position like that and produces, of course, a fully rectified image. It's about 8 times magnification, 21mm object glass size. Anyway, it's a nice illustration of that competence of the Porro prism system to deliver a versatility like this with the varying prism sizes and the ability to rotate the prisms through the optical axis. Maybe that rather indifferent copy of the Zeiss Thermon wasn't the best way to convince you of the power of the Porro prism to enable uniquely powerful instruments to be made. So how about this for the binocular aficionados? These are prisms from the superb 840 Zeiss Delta. It says they cost 10 and 6 each in March 1967. The Delta offered a large field of view of 8.5 degrees, and the demon in the box was the 30mm input window of the first prism. Remember, this prism is from a compact 8x40 binocular. The prism is 60mm long, and you can see that the input face tapers from 30mm down to about 20mm on the opposite end. There's more to it than just the first prism, of course. The objective and ocular are also outstanding. But it's the astonishing versatility of Porro's great idea that makes the whole package possible. The opportunity to relatively easily shape the prism to perfectly match the requirements of the objective lens is just one aspect of the immense design versatility of the Porro system. There was just one snag. When I spoke of Porro's use of prisms, I mentioned high quality. Well, the devil is in the detail. Right-angle glass prisms have been around for hundreds of years before Porro was even born, but they were useless to Porro. He needed prisms that had a standard of optical flatness on every glass surface except the sides. It's common knowledge that for most of history, good lenses have been difficult to make. Less well known is the fact that optically flat glass is just as hard to make, if not harder. And here we have 3 surfaces rather than the lens with just 2. He could make good prisms, or rather, he could make prisms that were good enough for his instruments. And if you had your own navy, you could probably afford to buy his custom-built binoculars. So few were made, as far as I know, not one survives today. But there are some examples of his military rangefinders, which used his prismatic method to superimpose one image on top of another. The neat-looking device we see here is about 6 inches or 150 millimeters long. Legend has it that Porro was content to use his patent and produce only small numbers of instruments which utilised his double right-angle prism system, and never really felt the need to solve the quality in volume puzzle that would be required to make his ideas suitable for large-scale production. His patent expired before anyone could capitalise on his idea of making the Porro prism binocular for the mass market with any kind of trade protection from imitators. Or so it seemed. Enter Carl Zeiss and Ernst Abbe in Germany. They admired Porro's system, and they figured out how to make the high-quality right-angle prisms that Porro's system required. But Zeiss wasn't just an optician, he was a competent businessman. And he wanted to do with the prismatic binocular what the French had done with the field glass, and that's reproduce it endlessly and reap the rewards. This needed mass production techniques. His investment in the technology to produce the prisms in the necessary quantity would need protection. What to do? The Porro patent was already blown. No one could use that anymore. It was open to anyone, and in principle, once his binocular was released to the public, companies around the world could copy the design and wouldn't have to pay him a pfennig. Zeiss's team looked closely at Porro's expired patent, and they found that some of the important features of the geometry of the system had not been specified in the patent application articles. In particular, no mention had been made of the increased stereoscopic perception that was possible with the Porro prism design. By moving the objective lenses outboard of the oculars, that's to say further apart than the human eyes, the stereo perception of the observer was enhanced. And most importantly for Zeiss, this idea was protectable with international patents. And until his patent expired in 1908, it meant that no one could make a prismatic binocular that looked and functioned like the Zeiss Feldstecher. Released in 1896, the Feldstecher revolutionized handheld optical aids. Competent optical companies around the world wriggled and fought against the bonds of the Zeiss patent, but the Zeiss legal team chased down all infractions. Understanding that his company would have only a limited amount of time to dominate the market for this type of device, very shrewdly Carl Zeiss formed a lasting trading partnership with the American company Bausch Lomb to take the Porro prism binocular to the widest possible global market. Zeiss also sold limited licenses to 2 other companies, one in Paris and one in St. Petersburg. Bausch Lomb, or B&L, was a significant optical specialist. They were picked by Zeiss because of their competence and their manufacturing capacity. As a partner, B&L didn't just sit back and harvest that Zeiss license. They made contributions of their own to the evolution of the prismatic binocular. Center focusing, for example, taken for granted now, was a B&L innovation and was introduced in 1901. Zeiss didn't start using the American idea until 1909 or 1910. Until 1908, the widest spacing of the objective lenses specified in the Zeiss patent forced companies to rotate the lenses of competing products inboard, reducing the stereoscopic perception and, more importantly, making their product look less and less like the market-leading instruments offered by B&L and Zeiss. As the market for the Zeiss binocular grew, so did Carl Zeiss's company wealth. Zeiss and B&L could afford more promotion and advertising than all of their competitors put together. We have some great examples of their adverts here. Note that both the distinctive shape of the binocular and the importance of the stereoscopic benefit is featured. But one company did dare infringe the Zeiss patent, almost successfully. The Moritz Hensoldt Optical Company. For the first time, between 1897 and 1899, the Hensoldt company used a Pentaprism to produce their 729 compact binocular. It had the same image correcting or rectifying features as the Zeiss and a similar ability to exploit the reflections to make the instrument's body a compact length. Unfortunately, the 7x29 Binocular, or Penta as it's sometimes called in England, also increased the stereoscopic perception as the objective lenses were further apart than the eyepieces, just like the Zeiss. This meant they couldn't sell the binocular in Germany, their home market. Quite a blow. But Hensoldt applied for patents in Britain and elsewhere, and they were granted. The Hensoldt binocular was novel. It was the first time a roof prism system had been used. There were benefits from the start. It used a single piece of glass. In fact, it used two pieces cemented together, but the industry refers to this as one piece of glass. The prism components were exacting to make, but they could be easily bench assembled and were easy to install in the casing. The binoculars still had to be collimated, but overall the build quality was very competitive with the Zeiss. So here are those pentaprisms out of that Hensoldt binocular, the Pentaprism binocular. And yeah, they look a bit strange. You can see the distinctive house roof shape that gives it its name. The roof part of the prism provides the double reflection vital for image correction. This one has had the front prism removed. Now, you've had roof prisms of this type possibly harboured under your roof already at some point in your life in the form of a SLR camera with a pentaprism, because the pentaprism is a roof prism. Here's one we prepared earlier. Let's just take the cap off so you can see it. And this type of prism is removable in this camera. Put that to one side. There's the pentaprism. I'm just going to remove that. I've already removed all the screws. So there it is. This is cut from a single piece of glass. And you can see, you would look in the back here, that's the viewfinder port, and that would give you a view straight through onto this. There would be a ground glass screen underneath this part. But the point is, if I lay that down here and then put our pentaprism from the Hensoldt, you can actually see these two prisms are essentially the same. The face here, the face there, the roof, the face at the back. The cuts are slightly different, but they are both roof prisms. So with that, I'm hoping that the roof prism now seems a little bit more familiar to you than it did previously. Now, we don't have the time to look at the interesting history of this manufacturer and the other contributions to the development of the binocular before they became part of the Zeiss operation in 1928. With many a twist and turn, the Hensoldt's roof prism idea became the version that dominates today. Let's bring this up to date now and look at a modern low-cost roof prism binocular and the Schmidt-Pechan roof prism module. I've speeded this up a bit so that we can get to the gravy of what's inside the binocular quicker. I've already loosened the rubber cladding, but I'll just take the badge off rather than spoil it. Peel the rubber back, a bit like a banana skin. There are 3 retaining and collimating screws here. I'll remove the eyepiece. Lots of black mastic particles have been shed getting that off. Nasty. Quite a few went inside. As soon as the eyepiece is removed, we get a good view of the roof prism assembly. This type of low-cost instrument isn't designed to be serviced. It's mostly glued together and not economically viable to repair. Where have you heard that before? The 3 grub screws are 120 degrees apart. They collimate the prism cage and retain it in place. Just slacken this last one. And there it is. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. You can see there's nothing else hiding in there. It's clear all the way to the objective. And here is the Schmidt-Pechan roof prism assembly. This is a good example of how low-cost roof prism binoculars have been optimized by better manufacturing techniques in the last decade. 10 or 15 years ago, this is the kind of roof prism capsule you would only find in a binocular costing twice as much. The quality has gone up and the price has come down. This metal front retainer is the part the grub screws push onto. It's a high precision cast alloy part that requires little or no machining or lathe work. It's ready to go right out of the mould. We can see the black coating on the half pentaprism here and the Schmidt roof prism here. A nice rigid assembly. I'll open it up now so we can see exactly how these prisms fit together. The metal retainer is held in place by 2 screws on each side. It comes off easily enough. We can see a lot more now. Here the roof of the Schmidt prism, and here the input face of the Pechan half prism. I'm just pushing the side arms apart to break the hold of the resin that's used to stabilize the prisms. It's not hard, only small amounts are used, and this particular type doesn't adhere too strongly. It's easy to gently push the prisms off their seat and gently remove the mirrored half pentaprism. It's separated from the Schmidt prism by a narrow air gap provided by this blade with a hole in it. Sometimes metal, this one's plastic. It just slips in there between the prisms. And finally, the roof prism, the Mr. Schmidt part of the Schmidt-Pechan partnership. I'll just show you how these fit together without the seat structure. That is, if I can organise my fingers better. There, that's the prism assembled. Looks a bit soiled with some blobs of resin still stuck to the prisms, but you get the picture. This black painted surface is covering the mirrored or aluminized top face of the half pentaprism. It's because the cut angle isn't quite acute enough to provide total internal reflection on its own and needs a bit of help from a mirror coating. Lots of folk don't realise their modern binoculars use mirrors like this. The roof prism keys into the holder very precisely. You can see at the bottom of the roof angle there's a little flat area that fits into a slot. Then the blade, and now the top prism can be positioned. Again, it fits into a precise pocket, no adjustment required, each mating part relying on very narrow tolerances in the manufacturing. Add the front retainer come collimating ring, and we're back where we started. A lot of cleaning up to do before I can put this assembly back in the binocular. The ascendancy of this elaborate prism system is not surprising. The prism module is fantastically compact and robust, lending itself to make powerful binoculars in the smallest possible space. The prism's 6 reflections once again can do their usual work of both inverting the image, or correcting it, and folding the light cone from the lens, making the instrument shorter and more compact. We can see from the diagram that the design of the 2 prisms is such that the entrance and exit beams are coaxial. So unlike the Porro method, the system doesn't deflect the beam if it's centered on the optical axis. This coaxiality of the entrance and exit beams allowed for a straight, compact optical design, which is a significant advantage, resulting in a lighter, smaller and more streamlined product compared to a Porro design with its offset tubes. This inline configuration is key to making the instrument more portable and easier to handle. The Schmidt-Pechan roof prism is, from a technical standpoint, a somewhat complex design. Light entering the Schmidt-Pechan system reflects more times. The diagram here has more arrows than General Custer's hat, making it less efficient, and unless steps are taken, light can scatter within the prisms, lowering contrast. Along with other designs, the Schmidt-Pechan also has phase correction problems, and anti-reflection coatings have to be applied to the prisms to improve resolution and contrast. We'll just take a moment to look at these light scatter problems encountered with the complex Schmidt-Pechan design. We'll start with the roof prism from a lower priced by-42 binocular. The coatings seem to be minimal as I look at this. One of the little tests we can do is put this on my trusty laser here, collimation laser, and as I look at this I can see an awful lot of light spilling out. Can you see it coming onto my glove there? There's a lot of light spraying around, and the problem with that is it's going to lead to a reduction in the contrast of the binocular, so that's really not that healthy. This is a very noisy prism system, this particular specimen. If we look at one that's a little bit further up the quality tree, this shows you something I think that's a little bit nearer the mark. We've still got what looks like glass reinforced polymer of some kind of ABS or something like that here, but we've got an all metal collimation ring. So this is the ring again where the collimating screws bear, but you notice it's screwed together, a lot more robust. And then these holes here, the retention has been greatly added, the prism retention, by resin glue being injected into those holes, and the same back here. And there's a good quantity of resin being put into that, and this just feels like a very rigid structure. We've got that same aluminized surface on the half pentaprism prism at the bottom here, and we can see the roof prism at the top here. All in all, this is a cage from a medium quality binocular, quite well made. You could expect to get a good service life out of a roof prism cage like this. Here's an even better one from a more expensive binocular. We're moving up the price range here, and hopefully even on the camera you can see the multi-coatings on there quite nicely. A lot of attention to the retention and positioning of the prisms on this binocular. You can see this has been well and truly glued and screwed. At the front here you can see the screws retaining that. This also is the ring that's being used to collimate the prism once it's in the binocular, but you can see all the details there. If I do that trick with the laser, I don't know whether you can get a sense of it, much cleaner, much less noise spilling out of this. We can see the beam coming out of the top here, hopefully you can see that. But if I show you the top of the roof prism, the Schmidt prism here, you can see there's nothing coming out there really. It's really quite orderly. So there's differences in quality, even if the technology is the same. There can be a big difference in the overall build quality of these things. And as messy as this looks, this is out of a $250, $300 binocular. Let's just show you that alongside a Porro prism module. So don't go thinking that the Porro prisms just always flap about inside the binocular. It's also possible to make a rigid module like this. We can see that the prisms are in quite close coupling. Straps are being used and screws. This is a very rigid structure. From a similar size binocular, so this is from an 8 or a 10 by 42, and this is from a 10 or 8 by 50, possibly slightly smaller than a 50 even, this particular one. But you can see there is a similarity in the idea of the structure, but not in the size. You can see that the Porro prism is taking up just a lot more room. It's a lot bulkier, and there just isn't anything you can do about that. Big difference in the appearance of the size there to do essentially the same job. The amount of optical folding in this module has been reduced by having the prisms very close together, so we've probably got about only a little bit more than the amount of optical folding that's going on in the roof prism here. So these two units are really quite comparable. As you're there, let's take a quick look at the competence of these two systems that have differing looks but very similar functionality. Now I want to show you the image erection properties of the Porro and roof prism systems. I want you to see it with your own eyes and not just be taking my word for it. I'm going to use this 50mm binocular lens mounted up here, and I'm just going to shove it in the holder. So I've put the lights down a bit so that you can see a bit more of what's going on here. You can see the candle flame here, and you can see that it's upside down. Now I'm actually going to offer up the prisms systems directly to this aperture here, and it's worth bearing in mind that the aperture in the objective barrel here is a little bit bigger than the opening in the roof prism, for example, and also that goes the same thing for the opening in the Porro prism system, but I'm just going to physically hold it up there with my hand like that, nothing too clever. And in truth, this probably ought to be a little bit further downrange, encountering the light cone coming from the lens a little bit in a narrower taper before going in there, because obviously we're going to, some of the light that's coming out of here won't actually end up on the screen, and it won't be passing through the prism system. But for the simplicity, I'm just going to hold it up there rather than make any sort of a rig to hold it or anything like that. So I'm just going to hold it up there. This is the roof prism that we're going to use. This really rather natty little one here. I've got a couple, but this is probably one we're going to use. And the same goes for the Porro prism. I'm just going to offer that up. And this is the one that we're actually going to be using. It's quite a neat, with a metal frame round it and straps holding the prisms onto this metal frame. And it makes it quite comparable, I think, with the Schmidt-Pechan system here. So I think the two are quite comparable with one another. So let's introduce the Porro prism. Bear in mind it's the image is going into this window and then coming out of this window. So it's offset by, I don't know, about what is that from center to center? Probably about 1.25 inches at least offset to one side. Doesn't make any difference to the image, of course, but it does mean we have to think about what's going on a little bit. First, the Porro. Take it away again. It doesn't matter how I rotate it, the image, providing I keep it on the center of the screen, the image orientation stays the same. Now let's switch to the roof prism. This time the image is coming straight out of the center of the prism cage. And again, I can rotate this thing. Doesn't matter how, the orientation on the screen stays the same. And incidentally, it makes no difference, and this is the same with the Porro. I can reverse it, and it doesn't make any difference at all. It works just as well this way around. So you saw there that the Porro prism system and the roof prism system are both equally competent at correcting the viewed image, and both can be used to fold up the focal length of the objective lens in the multiple reflections provided by their prisms. We've looked at the Schmidt-Pechan roof prism cage. Let's look at it in situ in a typical modern middle quality 8x42 roof prism binocular. This one, it's a Vanguard Endeavour. And we can see it's been beautifully cut away so that we can see inside. I'm going to mount that just so that I can talk to you about it easily. Hopefully we've got a good view of that there. Lots of things we can see here. One of the nice things to see is the internal focusing system, which is achieved by a single field lens. A lot of glass in this binocular, 3-element ED optics at the front here, cemented doublet at the front here, and then an air-spaced element at the back here. At this end, we've got 2 cemented elements. We've got 3 groups, a cemented doublet here, another cemented doublet here, and then a single lens. So we can see we've got 5 pieces of glass there. The field lens for the focusing in the middle here. We can see the prism, the roof prism cage here quite nicely. All of the internal moving parts make this a binocular very easy to water seal. We've only got some rods passing through this center block, which are fairly easy to seal up. All the rest of the binocular, nothing else moves. It can be made very rigid, and we can have O-ring seals here. This binocular, or version of it, is still in production. I think it sells for about $200, maybe 170, 80 pounds, around about 200 euros as well. So it's a great example, I think, of the sophisticated nature of the modern binocular. Very large eyepieces, the oculars here are large and comfortable, lots of eye relief, with a moving eye cup, which will give you plenty of comfort if you're using prescription eyewear. So all in all, a very comfortable binocular. What can we say about these two great optical systems, the Porro and the roof prism? Hopefully I've left enough clues that you've understood that asking which is better requires too much qualification to be worthwhile answering in general terms anymore. The intense development and optimization of the roof prism binocular in the last 10 years makes it difficult to recommend a Porro binocular except under special circumstances. You'll find plenty of people still prepared to say, all things being equal, Porro is better. They sometimes add dollar for dollar or pound for pound. And I think this was true just 20 years ago, but it's an idea primarily from the past, and the world has turned. Matters are no longer equal. The optimization and price reduction seen in competently made instruments from the Far East have made the roof prism binocular the easy recommendation. The difference between a $3,000 or $4,000, pound, euro roof prism binocular and a good binocular costing 20% of this price hasn't changed much. The killer change is in the difference between a good $200, $300, pound, euro binocular and one costing 2 or 3 times as much. The gap has closed to the point where it's increasingly difficult to tell them apart. The latest high-volume manufacturing techniques have allowed binoculars to be built that have unparalleled performance and at the lowest price point in binocular history. This is good news for us, the buyers. With binoculars, you really have never had it so good. Never before has such a small fraction of an average monthly income been able to buy such a sophisticated and competent instrument. Now, if you've made it this far in a discussion about binocular prisms, it's likely that you enjoy gaining a deeper understanding of science and technology. If you're looking for a free and enjoyable way to enhance your knowledge of maths, science and technology, ranging from AI to cryptocurrency, check out our sponsor for today's video, Brilliant.org. Brilliant is the most engaging online platform for improving your understanding of subjects like science, maths and data science in an interactive and fun way. It helps you become a better thinker and problem solver, offering thousands of visual and interactive lessons in maths, science, programming, data analysis and AI. I've been a Brilliant user for a couple of years and I absolutely love it. I've deepened my understanding of various aspects of electrical circuits and calculus, which aids my work in grasping the mathematics of missile control and guidance. I particularly enjoyed the science thinking course. Many lessons take only a few minutes to complete, so I can always find time to learn something new. Brilliant's strength lies not only in its effective interactive learning methods, which allows you to achieve your goals at your own pace, but also in the enjoyment it brings to the learning process. With engaging quizzes and captivating animations, Brilliant opens up the exciting world of maths and physics, making them accessible and enjoyable for those of us with busy schedules. It's a fantastic way to spark curiosity, explore new knowledge and review what you've already studied. The courses on Brilliant are designed to fit into your busy life. With just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you can start learning important concepts. One thing I've come to appreciate about Brilliant is its flexibility. If I encounter a concept that I'm struggling with in my current course, I can easily switch to another course that focuses on that specific area. Once I've gained a better understanding, I can snap back to my original course instantly. This flexibility works wonders for me. Give your mind a daily workout with interactive courses in maths, programming, science, AI, data and more. You'll become a better thinker and problem solver, one hands-on lesson at a time. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free, go to brilliant.org/astronomy and nature TV. Scan the QR code on screen or click on the link in the description. Brilliant is also offering our viewers a 20% discount on an annual premium subscription, which gives you an unlimited access to all their content. And that's it for this video. It was fun to talk about binoculars again. Coming up, we've got short videos looking at an important V2 test crash from 1944 and the evolution of the calculator and the mathematics of rocket trajectory analysis at Peenemünde. We're still working on a comprehensive video about the V2's warhead. I think it's going to be a blast. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss any new uploads. Bye for now. Yeah, blast. The fat lime, he really did say that.